Hello. Hello. We are what it looks like half a mile from the racetrack. Once again, where if the wind will calm down just a little bit, because I think it's blowing about 7,800 mile an hour. So if it'll calm down to a cool, breezy 5,900, we'll be able to make some passes today. Nitrous only. We're here to see how fast this little doodad will go on a small shot of nitros. Welcome back. Once again, we are at the racetrack to finish what we started. In the last video, we made 2 very successful nitrous passes all the way to the stripe. Everything looked good, copacetic, so we came back to finish this deal off and see how fast we can run on this jet. Major changes this time. None. We didn't even take the car back to the shop. The car is basically set in the trailer for 24 hours and we're going back to the racetrack. So we're just going to pick right up where we left off. Hopefully the goal for today is we've got a little bit more time at the track today. They're open a little later on Sundays, so we've got a little bit more time, and I'd like to start getting after it early. So start moving things back, getting rid of the nitrous delay, ramping the nitrous in, start messing with the nitrous controller today. That's really what we want to do, because we haven't really touched it since we fixed the Hertz problem or whatever. So that's the goal. First pass of the day today, we're going with 4,600 on the launch RPM. That's going up 200 RPM from the last pass out of the last test session. This is where I'd like to be with this gear ratio. This is where, we're starting to get to that point where things are going to start picking up a lot. 4,600 on the launch RPM. We're gonna move the 1-2 shift out 150, which is gonna put it about 75, 7,600. Should be 76, but we'll see. I'm still figuring out the time as well. 2-3, we're not gonna move. We're gonna take the 1-2 shift retard completely out. I think I was supposed to do that on the last pass, and I think I cut it in half, but I think we're gonna get rid of it this time. Yeah, it's checking the tire at the shift, but it's not zipping it off, and the G meter isn't, showing that it's slowing it down a whole bunch. So there is a situation where where shift retard will actually make it worse. So if you say you pull 2 degrees out to calm the shift down, well, as you pull the 2 degrees out, the engine kind of lays over a little bit. So then when the shift happens, it bang hits really hard, and it actually makes it spin the tires when it gains that momentum. So sometimes getting rid of it can help. So we're going to get rid of it completely. I took 50% out of it last time, and it did help. 13.5 on the tires, so about the same as the last pass from the last test session. We're going to start there again. Hey, Stinky. I'm going 2 clicks tighter on the rear compression, 2 clicks looser on the rear extension, and both of those changes are to try and slow down the squat and then allow it to drive up out of it quicker. It usually picks the car up. When the surface is there and the traction is good, you don't need to keep it pinned down and to keep the bite in the forelink for so long. You can allow it to drive up. And actually, as you allow it to drive up against the shock, it will add bite. It's crazy to think about, but it will. But it'll add bite out there, and it changes it from a short, it extends the bite, but it makes it a little softer on the head. Front compression, we're gonna tighten 1. So when the chute hit at the end of the run on the last pass, the front shock dove 1.5 inches, and it kind of laid there. So we're gonna tighten the compression 1 click on the front, maybe try and slow that down a little bit as well. I don't mind the 1.5 inches. I just don't want it to go straight down, because sometimes that'll unload the rear, make it harder to drive, basically. We're gonna take a 1/2 pound out of flowing fuel pressure on the nitrous side. So we're gonna be, I didn't find a 30 jet, I didn't find a cleanup jet, so it's still pretty rich. So the only thing we can do today is just go down a little bit more on the fuel pressure. So I think we're gonna be down about around 6 pounds flowing now, which is, you know, I don't like to go much lower than that, 5.5 maybe, but next time we take the car out, we definitely wanna get a cleanup jet in the nitrous side. So basically leave the fuel jet alone, up the nitrous 2000s to a 30 jet. The water grains are a little worse today, and the wind is horrible. I don't know what happened in Texas from yesterday to today. Yesterday, beautiful, calm, sun was out, birds were chirping. Today, wind's blowing 800 mile an hour, and the water grains went from 40-ish to 66, 68-ish. I'm sure by the end of the day, it'll probably be in the 70s, so humidity is up. There's more water in the air, so all cars naturally will tend to slow down a little bit when the water grains go up. But I feel like we're so light on everything, and we're picking up a bunch. I feel like it's still gonna go faster, even though the water is a little bit off. At some point, we gotta make this car run with whatever water is in the air, because you know it's gonna be 120 this summer. But that's about it for the first hit of the day. My goal with the tune-up is just 60 foot, basically. We're looking to pick it up in the 60 foot, which should pick it up in the 330. And then if we can gain a few numbers along the way in the back split, that's cool too. But without more jet, I'm not super concerned with the back split. It's gonna stay around the same. What were your goals for the day? Be a race car?
No.
Hit the gas?
Ruga.
We have different goals. Yes, Rev Limited burnouts and Ruga. That's her, and purge. She likes to purge. She does like to purge. And we're gonna go up to 925 on the bottle pressure so she can purge her little heart out. I'm gonna say, just because of the water, I went a 35 on the last one, I'm gonna say a 31. Say 531 at 131 and a half, maybe. 122, 121 60 foot. That's what I'm gonna say. I mean, at least that's what I wrote here. Something like that. All right, first pass coming at you. Write your prediction in the comments. Okay, you know, car went down. Time slip wasn't where we wanted to be, but that happens sometimes. Sometimes you just got to figure out what move was the wrong move. That's all. But let's go over it here. So it went 128 to the 60 foot, 357 to the 330, 547 at 128. The last pass was 126, 349, 535 at 131. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, water grains are a little worse. Shouldn't have slowed down that much. Shouldn't have slowed down that much. I'm not sure why it slowed down that much. Maybe that nitrous bottle was a little light. On the last run she made yesterday, it was 873. Started at 933, ended at 877. This pass started at 933, nice, very consistent there, and ended at 846. I mean, I don't see, what is that, 46, 56, 66, 76, 31 PSI. I don't see 31 PSI taken away. I don't see it taking away 3 mile an hour, more than 3, no, less, yeah, 3. I don't see 30 PSI. I don't even see 50 PSI being 3 mile an hour. I don't know that 100 PSI would be 3 mile an hour. So I don't know there. I don't know. I know I can tell why it slowed down in the 60 foot, which it only slowed down 2 numbers. Should have picked up 4 numbers, but it slowed down 2. The numbers at 1.25 were up. They're still not where we want to be, but they're up. It was 800 at a half. It spun or waffled the tire or something just at 3/4, right at 3/4 of a second. Not sure why that happened. Everything's been going good there. It looks like it may have tried to shake the tire a little bit there. I don't know why. There's some other things in the data that doesn't make any sense at all. Also, Jackie said it didn't really want to idle, which is weird.
It was idling low.
It was idling low.
And then it didn't really seem like it wanted to like come above low.
Right.
Like it was struggling.
So like, yeah, which could be that the humidity, you know what I mean? It could be a little fat now that it's not, the weather's not as good. Honestly though, it shouldn't. You move from 38 or 40 water grains to 60, even 60 or 70, it shouldn't make it a totally different car. I mean, there's going to be small things that you notice, but I don't know why the tire got unhappy at 3/4 of a second. That's a weird spot for it to get unhappy. EGTs all look good. Pan back looks good.
People ask what pan back is. They usually write pan back or van back.
Oh, sorry.
Pan back.
Pan back.
Van back. Or,
van pack.
Yeah, the backpack. There's
backpack. Back. Pan vac is oil pan vacuum, basically. So it's going to be, we're taking a pressure reading off of the valve cover, and it goes to a pressure transducer, and then we have a vacuum pump on the front of the motor. It spins with a belt. It pulls a vacuum on the oil pan, basically. It pulls a vacuum on the whole crankcase, but we call it pan vac because it's oil pan vacuum, not manifold vacuum. So you got man vac and pan vac. Man vac, manifold vacuum. Pan vac is oil pan vacuum. Manifold vacuum is going to be the vacuum that the pistons create, pulling the air in the motor or whatever, or lack of vacuum sometimes. And then pan vac is going to be the vacuum that the vacuum pump creates. And the reason we're doing that on a nitrous car is you have to keep the oil out of the chamber. You can't, you have to keep all oil and contaminants out of the combustion chamber, because if something gets past the rings, if you've got some blow by, or if you got a ring going bad or too much oil in it or something like that, or if you flutter the rings, you have a little too much timing in it or whatever, it will allow some oil from the crankcase, because you're pressurizing the crankcase. Just as the pistons make pressure going up, they make pressure going down. So you're pressurizing the crankcase, and then oil gets into the combustion chamber, and it instantly kills the octane. If you add oil to gasoline, it just kicks it in the dick. So you run a vacuum pump to keep the oil out of the combustion chamber, keep everything sealed up nice and tight. And then because we're running a vacuum pump, we can read that vacuum on the oil pan, and it will tell us if I put too much timing in this thing, you'll see it on the pan back because the rings will flutter. They'll lose ring seal if you detonate a motor. It loses ring seal, and then you'll see that whatever that vacuum pump was able to pull the pass before, if say it was able to pull 12 inches of vacuum or 16 inches of vacuum, or on some of the nicer stuff 20 inches of vacuum, you'll see that number go back towards zero. It'll start losing vacuum at that point in the run, and then once it stops, it'll usually flatten off, but it doesn't always gain back to where it was. So if you watch the pan vac, you can, or if you watch the oil pan vacuum, if you watch the backpack, you can see a lot of things about an engine, its health, its tune-up, its, whatever. So it's like the biggest thing, it's the biggest thing that you can do besides reading the plugs. It's the biggest thing that'll tell you what the rings are doing, what the pistons are doing. If you have detonation, if something's getting by the rings, you'll know it. But with that being said, if you have a condition with the rings, you can also sometimes see it in the manifold vacuum. At wide open throttle, not really, because manifold vacuum goes to zero, but at idle and stuff like that, you can usually see some stuff. So, I read them all. If there's a sensor I can stick in a hole on this car, I'll do it. I really like to have data for this exact situation. So when something goes on, the car slows down, and I don't know why, this is where I want the data. But here's something that I noticed right away. There's a few things that I noticed right away. It doesn't want to, the idle is a little low. It doesn't seem like it wants to idle. You can see in the data log that she's revving it more than normal, which usually means it's not wanting to idle very good. So a lot of times the trans brake will let you know if it's not making the power that it's supposed to, or if it's, if there's something wrong with the engine or whatever. You can usually see it there. So you're locking first gear and reverse together, and then you're flooring it. And so it's basically using every bit of torque and horsepower that it has to try and push those two against each other to keep the car stopped until the light goes green. Well, as the RPM goes up, you limit the RPM with a rev limiter, which cuts cylinders off and turns cylinders back on to keep the RPM where you want it. If the engine is making power, it'll go up pretty straight, and then when it hits the limiter, it'll be choppy. The choppier it is, the harder it's trying to go past the rev limiter. So like here, the rev limiter is set at 4,600. It should be up against that 4,600 and just banging on it, but it's not. It actually looks like it hits the rev limiter a little bit, and then it comes off. Then it hits it, and then it comes off. Then it hits it, like it's not wanting to be up there, which is weird because this is the pass from yesterday, and you can see it goes up straighter, and it's banging on it, pretty solid. Now, it struggled just a little bit here, but then it's jamming on it. Pass before that, this was the first pass yesterday. Idles high, goes straight up, hits the limiter, stays on it the whole time until she lets off. As soon as she lets off the brake, RPM starts on its way up. That's what you want. On the last one, this isn't very uniform. It doesn't go straight up. It just kind of rolls there. And then when she lets off the brake, it doesn't move. It doesn't start its way up. It lays there around the rev limiter RPM until almost 0.3 of a second of the run. So, and then it finally takes off, which is probably about 0.4 when the nitrous kicks in. It goes up, but then it lays over flat. And then there's I don't even know what all that is. Like, I don't know. RPM dips here, goes up, lays over, goes up, makes the shift, then it tries to climb out of it, but then it lays over. Then it's moving along, got a little wiggle there, and it hits the shift, and then it dies. It goes dead for a second, then it takes off, and then it goes dead, and then it takes off, and then it goes dead. I don't know. Nothing in the data is indicative of that. Other than the RPM and the G meter and the time slip, those are the only things that are showing that it slowed down. Everything else looks good. I pull all the plugs every pass. We push it up, we push it back. So, there's no false readings with spark plugs, and they all look rich and retarded, just like they did the pass before. Only weird thing I can see is in the converter charge pressure. There was a moment there was a couple times during the run where the charge pressure fluttered or dropped and then came back and dropped and then came back. But converter charge pressure is directly relative to RPM. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the converter charge pressure move up and down because the RPM is going up and down, the engine's, pulling and laying over, or is it because, or is the engine laying over and pulling because the converter charge pressure is doing weird things, So we're gonna try and make another pass, and we're gonna see if it gets better or if it gets worse. For the second pass, we are going to keep the two-step at 4,600. We're gonna pull and this is a habit I have. If the car slows down, then the first thing I want to do is go back to the last known good tune-up and see if it repeats, or if it slows down from here, then we got something, we need to take this thing back to the shop and figure it out. But so we're going to leave it at 4,600. We're going to get back the 1.2 up to where it was before. We're taking 150 RPM out of the 1.2. We're not making any changes to the 2.3. We're going to put the 50% shift retard in it, even though I don't think that had anything to do with it. We are going to turn the idle air bleed screws in a quarter a turn all the way around. That should lean it up a little bit if it is too fat, if it is because of the weather, if there is something that I'm not seeing in the weather. Sometimes you can have good water, you can have water drains one way and then altitude the other way and barometer one way, so maybe I'm not seeing it. I'm also going to tighten the rear extension too. It's going to run different on different days, sure. You go to the track one weekend and it may go 530s at the end of the night, and then you go back and it may go, if it went 535 before, you go back, it may go at 38 or 39 or even a 41. But the mile an hour is usually going to be pretty close, and the 60 foot's usually going to be pretty close. Those two things, they stay pretty close. This deal, it didn't. It went from 535 to 547. It went from 131 to 128. So we're going to back everything back up, just make sure that we're not missing something silly, and we're going to go out there and see if it'll run the same, hell, if it'll run the same 547 at 128, if it runs the same number it just ran, then it's just me. It's just tune-up. It's just something that I'm not catching that this thing wants, and I'm not giving it. If it slows down even more, well, then we have a major problem somewhere and we need to figure it out. So here we go. We're going back up T2, see if we can get this thing figured out. Might as well throw this thing away. Literally can throw the notepad away. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's wrong with it. She did a burnout, rolls out there, she killed it. The track guy runs out to the car, and he's looking at her like, why'd you turn it off? But then he's also looking around the car, making sure everything's okay, doing what a track guy should do. And he noticed the oil and starts pushing her back. So we have a giant oil leak under the car, but that's not what worries me the most is that she killed it. Because if it's leaking oil, Jackie doesn't know it's leaking oil. She's in the car. She wouldn't know it's leaking oil on the track unless it's leaking oil in the car, or she, on fire or something. So, so the fact that she killed it means she knew something was wrong in the car. So I don't know. We pushed it back. We looked. It's got oil everywhere. I mean, there's oil everywhere. So I don't know what happened. We don't know what happened. We don't know. But usually when there's when a car wasn't leaking oil when it went up there and it's leaking all of it when it comes back, it's usually not a good sign. Said she just felt it wasn't right. It was vibrating, knocking, whatever. It was making a noise, whatever. She felt something and she killed it, which is what she's supposed to do. We don't know what it is. We're not going to assume the worst. We're not going to pray for the best. This is a mechanical thing. Mechanical things have mechanical problems. Things go wrong sometimes. But, on the bright side, the car's going back in the trailer, shiny side up. We are going to do what we do. We're going to get this thing in the trailer. We're going to take it back to the shop. We're going to put it on the lift. And we're going to find out what went wrong. Find out what it was, diagnose it, find out why, whatever it is that happened, get it fixed, silicone it up, whatever fuck we got to do, and then we're going back to the racetrack until this thing, does what we tell it to do 2 days in a row. It's all we want. Stick around. We're going to figure out what's wrong with it, and we will be back. You think it's karma for me talking shit to Tommy? No, surely not. I take it back, Tommy. If this was karma, I take it back. Please, karma, please take the curse off of me, Tommy. Take the curse off. All right. See you later. Well, bye. Whatever.